In the year 5000, humans reached the edge of the universe, but they didn't expect to find life there. In the distant future, humanity not only mastered space travel but also built a galactic empire spanning the entire Milky Way. Planetary travel became the norm, and the empire is ruled by 3 clones of the late Emperor Cleon, who maintain the regime established by their original. Terminus is a planet that became the starting point for a shift in the galactic order. Once a distant outpost on the edge of the galaxy, surrounded by underdeveloped and warring planets, it is now a unique place. Not only does it harbor life, but it is also home to a mysterious vault. The vault is surrounded by an invisible magnetic field that affects humans negatively. Children are fascinated by it and often challenge each other to see who can get the closest. As they approach, they begin to experience headaches and dizziness, and if they get too close, they may pass out. One daring child, having snuck away from home, ventures too close and collapses, terrifying the other children. Luckily, Salvor Hardin is nearby. She not only carries the boy to safety but also warns the others not to attempt such stunts again. Salvor is a remarkable figure, with legends claiming that she is the only person capable of approaching the vault. She dismisses these rumors, but she has yet to realize the crucial role she is destined to play in the near future. Gal Dornick is a math prodigy forced to flee her home planet of Synax. There, the ruling church represses science, considering it the work of the devil. Rejecting both the church and religion, Gal undergoes a cleansing ritual in which several gemstones are removed from her face. She has won a prestigious competition and earned the right to study under the famous Hari Seldon, the creator of psychohistory, a science that predicts the future through mathematical calculations. The people of Synax view Gal with contempt and hatred, so her parents hurriedly send her off on a ship, giving her a tearful goodbye. They cannot abandon their faith and leave with her, but they hope she will fulfill her potential and never return to the planet where she could be executed. On the ship, Gal meets Gerald, a thoughtful man who helps her adjust to her new reality. She is unfamiliar with how the ship operates and is frightened by her first space journey, so Gerald offers her constant support. During the space jump, people must sleep, as it's dangerous for them to stay awake. They are placed in special protective pods, but Gal wakes up during the jump, shocking the crew. Soon after, she arrives on Trantor, the capital of the Galactic Empire, ruled by the 3 clones of Cleon. As Gal disembarks, she notices soldiers escorting several coffins and learns about a conflict between several planets on the edge of the galaxy. Equally awe-inspiring is the space elevator that takes her down to the planet's surface. Brother Dawn is still young and learning from Brother Dusk. At this time, the Empire is ruled by Cleon 12. Brother Day is aggressive and ruthlessly punishes anyone who dares question his authority and power. Upon learning that one of his subjects has read a treatise by someone who doubted the Emperor's rule, Brother Day immediately orders the man's execution. At a formal dinner, the clones, considered brothers, discuss both foreign and domestic policies, as well as the Empire's problems. Brother Dusk frequently teaches his younger sibling and allows him to take part in decision-making. Soon, delegations from 2 warring planets arrive on Trantor, and it is Brother Dawn who has the opportunity to settle the conflict, making his first wise and decisive choice. Meanwhile, Gal meets Rach, Hari Seldon's adopted son. He proves to be a pleasant conversationalist and sparks her interest, but Gal is focused on her studies. When she sees the magnificent library, she is stunned to hear that the building is soon to be destroyed. Hari gives her a rare treatise by her favorite author, written in the original language, and shares some bad news. Hari has the ability to predict the future and knows that the Empire is doomed to collapse. The government not only fears his words but also the possibility that people will believe him, so he is due to be arrested soon. Since Gal has now arrived on Trantor, she too will be arrested alongside him, but she may be the one who can help them escape. The Emperor and his brothers receive gifts from the warring planets. They recognize that these are not mere souvenirs, but objects with hidden messages. One army presents a bow made without metal, indicating their limited resources, while the other gifts reflect their power and readiness for war. Brother Dawn struggles to understand the situation, so Brothers Day and Dusk advise him on how to act wisely to end the war and bring order to this corner of their empire. Hoping for a less grim prediction, Gal seeks out a seer and asks him to reveal her future. However, his prophecy is no less terrifying, which forces her to reconsider her decisions. She begins to regret coming to Trantor in pursuit of knowledge, but it's already too late. At dawn, both Hari and Gal are arrested on charges of treason. During the court session, Hari faces the prosecutor and presents his predictions. He is convinced that the Empire's collapse is inevitable, and after its fall, a dark age will ensue, lasting no less than 30,000 years. Hari proposes the creation of a foundation, a repository of human knowledge that would help future generations rebuild civilization rather than start from scratch, learning how to make fire and reinvent the wheel. While Hari's words are met with skepticism and criticism, Gal has a private encounter with Gerald. It turns out that Gerald is not just a random fellow traveler but an Imperial agent who has been monitoring her since her first scientific discovery, which astonished her planet's people. Gerald offers Gal a deal: discredit psychohistory and Hari's claims. As a prodigy, she could be the only one capable of legitimately disproving the scientist's theories. The agent is extremely persuasive, presenting her with two options: either let Hari be executed or face the Empire's wrath herself. As Gal studies Hari's work, she realizes that he is right. Unafraid of the consequences, she confirms the accuracy of Hari's model. Furious, the Emperor orders the execution of both, as they challenge his absolute power. That night, terrorists infiltrate the Star Bridge and blow up Trantor's space elevator, causing it to crash to the ground, killing millions. Recognizing the horror of the situation, Brother Day decides to spare both Hari and Gal. During their conversation, Gal proves to be highly persuasive, convincing Day that executing Hari would only accelerate the Empire's downfall. Day listens to their arguments and agrees to establish the foundation, but he exiles them to the distant, uninhabited planet Terminus. It seems the Emperor simply wants to rid himself of them, while still keeping the knowledge in reserve, should Hari's predictions prove correct. Gal is outraged by the situation but understands that Hari had already foreseen this outcome and had been waiting for it. 35 years later, Salver, the warrior, decides to test the claim that she can approach the vault. Waiting until nightfall, she climbs the mountain, and after pushing through the magnetic field, she touches the vault. After the destruction of the space elevator and the resulting millions of casualties, the Emperor orders an investigation to find those responsible. Edo Demerzel, serving as the major domo and the last surviving robot of the galaxy, is tasked with tracking down the suspects. She travels to the dwarf planet Afru, home to the best scientists, after receiving information that an explosive device used by the terrorists was developed there. Upon invading the planet, the Emperor's soldiers execute everyone in a secret laboratory, sparing only the lead specialist. The woman is promised a chance to survive if she reveals the identity of the mastermind, but this leads nowhere. Demerzel struggles to identify the culprit behind the tragedy, causing anxiety for the Emperor and his brothers. Meanwhile, Gary and his crew, along with their families, are en route to Terminus to assimilate the planet. They are aboard a slow starship with several years to prepare for a new life in this barren world. Gale and Rach meet by the pool, where she encourages the scientist's son to learn how to swim. This romantic moment leads to them starting a relationship, but they decide to keep it a secret from Rach's father, who is foreign to all things human. Gale dedicates all her free time to learning and becomes obsessive about mastering every profession. Each day, she changes her outfit color and heads to the appropriate department to tackle tasks as well as the specialists. In one of the simulations, she encounters a terrifying monster and panics. The assistants open fire, but this results in an explosion. Thankfully, no one is harmed, as it is merely a simulation, but they need to learn how to handle such issues in real life to minimize potential casualties. Later, Gale meets with Gary and learns he is prepared for the loss of human resources. Mathematical models suggest that 1/3 of the people won't survive landing, and many more will become victims of the hazardous work ahead. This statistic frightens Gale, and she hopes the calculations are not entirely accurate, but Gary remains indifferent. He is irritated that some crew members have begun calling him by name, as their mission allows no room for humanity, friendship, or love. The Emperor interrogates the ambassadors from the peripheral states of Anacreon and Thespis. They deny any involvement with the terrorists, despite having communicated in their language. The ambassadors are convinced that they could not have harmed the space elevator, knowing the potential consequences of such a disaster. The Emperor does not believe their words. Someone must be held accountable for the act. Unable to find the real culprits behind the terrorist attack, he decides that those who theoretically could have known the bombers must suffer. Meanwhile, Dusk tries to paint frescoes but feels a tremor in his hands, realizing that his days are numbered. In the evening, he heads to the ruined part of the city and meets a seer to find out if Gary's words about the Empire's downfall are true. The seer tells him that Gale is not a prophet, but both she and the scientist are correct. The Empire is doomed, and its end is near. During an appointment with the doctor, Gale requests to have her embryo removed, leaving it so she can have a child in the future. The doctor admits that not everyone opts out of pregnancy due to the mission and the challenges that await them on the distant planet. This worries Gale, prompting her to speak with a girl who has decided to carry her pregnancy to term. Despite all the persuasion and advice, the girl wants to give birth to feel like a happy mother and is unafraid of the possible consequences of her decision. Later, Gary hints that he knows about Gale and Rach's relationship. This worries Gale, but not as much as her calculation errors. The scientist is missing several crucial numbers, like pieces of a puzzle, which could lead to catastrophic results. Rach asks Gale to solve the problem since she is a genius in mathematics and can find the necessary numbers. Soon after, Dusk organizes a dinner with the ambassadors of Anacreon and Thespis. He tries to be friendly, promising mercy if they cooperate. The Emperor and Dawn watch from the sidelines, believing their older brother is weak, but that's not the case. Dusk is only pretending to be benevolent. When he fails to gain their cooperation, he reveals his true nature, vowing brutal revenge for what has happened. The next morning, the Emperor sentences to death everyone who accompanied the ambassadors and begins bombing their planets. They are forced to witness the destruction of Anacreon and Thespis, leading to millions of casualties among the population. Dawn does not understand her older brother's cruelty, but Demerzel asserts that sometimes such decisions are the only right choice. Gary realizes that Gale was right and decides to show humanity toward the staff. While in the laundry room, he calls each worker by name, expressing gratitude for their small yet crucial contributions to the success of the Foundation. During dinner, Gary tries to connect with his son, but it proves unsuccessful, as Rach is his adopted child. He remembers his biological father and still loves him, which prevents him from feeling affection for Gary, who raised him. Gale supports Rach during this difficult time, promising to have children with him in the future. Later that evening, she senses something is wrong and rushes to the professor. She witnesses Rach injuring his own father and then urges her to escape the scene. Gary loses his life, and Rach locks Gale in a capsule, tossing her a bloodstained knife before sending her out into open space. 400 years before these events, Cleon, the emperor of all the planets in the Milky Way, dreamed of completing the construction of a space elevator. He was a wise ruler but saw that many things were in decline. He wanted to create a powerful legacy, but age was catching up with him. The emperor was ill and close to leaving this world for good. Not wanting to pass power to his heir, he resorted to cloning and devised a system of 3 successors, Dawn, Day, and Dusk, who would take turns ruling at appropriate intervals to ensure his reign continued indefinitely. Demerzel was in love with the emperor and promised to do everything she could to support the power of his clones. 19 years after the terrorist attack, Dusk has grown too old and has become more sentimental than ever. Demerzel sees in him the image of the first Cleon and feels sympathy for the man, knowing that his days are numbered. At the same time, someone's disappearance marks the beginning of something new, and she has grown accustomed to it. Dusk slowly prepares for euthanasia, but first decides to reflect on his entire journey. His predecessors were wise scholars and inventors, but he is only known for his love of frescoes. The man has not achieved great heights, and he is even more saddened by the fact that he has not preserved a legacy. The space bridge that Cleon dreamed of is destroyed and cannot be restored, while the remaining part of the platform poses a threat to the inhabitants of their planet. Understanding this, Dawn, Day, and Dusk set out on a flight to take one last look at the platform before it is destroyed. It seems they have lost a part of their past, but Dawn and Day promise to rectify the situation and create something new in memory of their older brother. That night, Dusk sneaks into the laboratory and sees a cloned infant. He realizes that Gary was right when he said emperors should stop cloning themselves. Dusk understands how wrong they have been, as a person should not witness their own birth, knowing it is all a facade. Upon returning to his bedroom, Dusk paints one last fresco, hoping to leave a mark behind. The next morning, a new dawn is born, with dawn becoming day, day becoming dusk, and dusk transforming into twilight. After bidding farewell to his brothers, he embarks on his final journey and turns to ash. 14 years later, the new dawn requests that the fresco be erased, refusing to acknowledge Twilight's legacy. Meanwhile, the group led by Gary has reached the edge of the universe. After losing Gary and Gale, they decide not to cancel the landing on Terminus and instead become followers of the late scientist and his assistant. Upon reaching the landing site, they are shocked to discover that another form of life already exists there, a repository with an invisible magnetic field. This entity, possessing an inexplicable power, repels people and instills fear. Consequently, they land the ship and establish a camp as far from the repository as possible, suspecting it may pose a potential threat. 35 years later, Salver, a second-generation colonist, has become the guardian of Terminus City. From childhood, she has been drawn to a mysterious artifact with a zero field, which does not repel her but instead lures her in, as if calling to her. In the present, Salver conducts an experiment and concludes that the magnetic field affects everyone except her. Furthermore, it is constantly expanding, which could pose a potential threat to their town. The followers continue to learn but realize that most knowledge will not survive the dark times. Because of this, Salver's mother and other scientists are forced to argue daily about which knowledge is of utmost importance and which can be erased from the history of humanity. Soon, Salver informs her mother about her discovery. Her mother doesn't understand why the magnetic field is expanding but suspects the consequences it might lead to in the near future. Hugo, a trader and Salver's lover, arrives at Terminus. After spending the night together, Salver heads out to patrol the area. She notices a small boy nearby the remnants of a ship and follows him to help. The child hides among the old, rusted metal structures, forcing Salver to search for him. At one point, she encounters a local monster but manages to scare it off with a shot. Looking up at the sky, Salver sees shining lights and realizes that it's a bad sign. Using a telescope, Salver and Hugo see that 3 warships from Anacreon are approaching them. The elders don't believe it could be true, as the Empire has established a prohibition against Anacreons and Thespis residents getting too close. Moreover, since they live in a scientific community with nothing to steal, an invasion seems unlikely. Salver suspects the reason behind it is the repository, which is increasing its magnetic field. Hugo, being from Thespis, confirms that this is indeed an invasion. The elders attempt to contact the Empire, but their transmitter is down. Salver's mother shows her the artifact containing Gary's mathematical formulas, but Salver doesn't understand it. Later that night, while patrolling, she sees the boy again and decides to chase after him. On an old ship, Salver finds an injured monster and ends up captured by a group of Anacreon residents who have secretly landed on the planet earlier than expected. Can the future of humanity be mathematically predictable? Doesn't such a theory overlook individual human emotions, free will, and the unpredictability of personal actions? Can we trust such predictions, even if they are based on science? Share your thoughts in the comments down below, give a thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next videos.